The story of Keel starts around 1981 in Nashville, Tennessee, with a band called Steeler. The original lineup featured Michael Dunnigan on lead guitar, Tim Morrison on bass, Bobby Eva on drums, and Ron Keel on vocals and rhythm guitar. Steeler would pack up and move across the country to Los Angeles, California, where they would appear on the first Metal Massacre compilation from Metal Blade Records with Cold Day in Hell. Bobby would eventually leave to be replaced by drummer Mark Edwards, and not long after, a new lineup would form with Rick Fox on bass and a young 19-year-old Swedish kid on guitar named Yngwie Malmsteen. Yngwie had come to the US on a work visa with the help of producer Mike Varney, who also signed Steeler to his Shrapnel Records label and recorded their single self-titled album in 1983. This is an overall great album, but I do have to wonder what they were thinking with that cover. Like, are these guys even in the same band? And the answer was, not entirely. Steeler is a mix of catchy, straightforward hard rock tracks and elaborate solos that don't seem like they should work together, but they totally do. And Ron sounds great here too, with controlled vocals and an impressive range. However, the dynamic behind the scenes just wasn't going to work long term, with Ron focused on a more mainstream approach and Yngwie clearly not content to remain in the background. Still, largely because of this, the Steeler album ends up having a really unique quality. The tracks are overall energetic and mostly on the commercial side, but Yngwie's classically inspired solos give it a sound that was unlike anything else in the Los Angeles metal scene. And it has Serenade on it, which is a highlight for me. Yngwie would leave after just a few months with the band to join Alcatraz, and Steeler would go through a few more members before Ron would decide to just break up and make a fresh start under the name Keel. The original lineup consisted of Ron on vocals, Bobby Marks on drums, Kenny Chason on bass, Mark Ferrari on guitar, and briefly David Michael Phillips on guitar before he'd leave to join King Cobra and be replaced by Brian J. This lineup would put out Keel's debut album, Lay Down the Law. This gets lumped in with glam metal for some reason, but for the most part, this is straight up US power metal.
Lay down the law. You'll never know when you get your last chance. Lay down
Although I do have some questions about the album cover, mostly logistical. Like, where's the dude's arm, for example? And I guess she's a cop, but that seems like an impractical uniform even for 1984, so who knows? Anyway, the album rocks. Plus, the guitarists and solos seem like a much better fit for the music compared to Steeler. I think every song on here is great. Even the Rolling Stones cover, Let's Spend the Night Together, grew on me after a bit.
Let's spend the night together. Now I need you more than ever. Let's spend the night together now. Oh, yeah.
Somewhere around this time, Keel would also get signed to Gold Mountain Records, a subsidiary of MCA, and start work on a second album. Drummer Steve Riley would come on briefly for this before leaving to join Wasp. He'd be replaced by Dwayne Miller, finally creating a stable lineup.
They're all younger than I am. I'm 20. I'm the oldest, 24.
Really?
And Dwayne's 21, Kenny's 21, and the other two are 23. So it's they're all young. Like I was like a freight train going, and I said get on my train or get off, and they did. They aligned their creative goals with mine, and we've been working well together ever since. I'm very happy with the band. I feel real lucky. I got a good bunch of guys.
Keel's second album, The Right to Rock, is good but a little weird, partly because it's produced by Gene Simmons.
He contributed 3 songs, didn't he?
Right, yes, he did. Easier Said Than Done, Get Down, and So Many Girls,
That's
So Little
right.
Time. Yeah.
Why did you use 3 of his songs? You must have had enough of your own material for the album.
Well, he offered to let us use them. They were songs that he had written for the Animalize album that didn't make it to the Animalize record. And he offered to let us use them, and I was very flattered and jumped at the chance to do his songs.
Oh, Gene Simmons wanted to cram some of his own songs onto your album? You don't say. Look, I'm not saying Gene's tracks are bad, but they just slow the album down. And while they have some cool solos, they also just kinda sound like discarded Kiss tracks.
She set some sights on bigger goals. Before you know it, she snatched your soul. Don't burn your bridges when east meets west, or you're gonna be in a battle with the West.
And since Lay Down the Law had been an independent release, the band would also recycle 3 songs from that album, including that Rolling Stones track again.
Why choose that?
It's just a song that I always wanted to do, and I love to do other people's music. I love to take songs and make them into my songs.
As well as Speed Demon, which is probably the best song on both albums, and Tonight You're Mine, retitled to You're the Victim, I'm the Crime.
Say your prayers, tonight you're mine. You're the victim. I am the crime. I'm the crime. I can't wait forever to see my dreams come true.
And the 3 new original tracks are great too, including the title track, which got a music video containing one of my favorite music video tropes. It's the not too distant future, and rock and roll is illegal. Even better, there are agents being sent out to crack down on all the underground rock broadcasters.
We have a 311 in progress.
Then there's this kid, who apparently hasn't heard about all the new rules. He's not even wearing headphones or anything, and the authorities show up to put a stop to it.
Read him his rights.
Meanwhile, there's a highly illegal Keel concert starting. while Keel is off playing in their secret location, the Kid escapes the agents with the timely help of a local anti-authority biker gang.
I'm fighting for justice, for the American way. I believe in what I do, and I mean what I say.
He goes home to rock out in the privacy of his own bedroom, but he can't even do that because the agents show up there too, apparently called in by the Kid's own parents.
We won't turn it down, 'cause it's our way of life.
Luckily, those bikers are keeping a close eye on the Kid, which honestly his parents should be far more concerned about than whatever music he's listening to.
That is the right to rock. Fight for it, the right to rock.
Anyway, the agents find the Keel concert and bust in, but Brian and Mark jump off stage and apparently electrify the lead agent with the power of rock and roll. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. Also, the Kid is alright too, and even gets a personal greeting from Ron Keel as a thank you for evading the law and leaving his family all in the name of rock and roll. The following year, Keel would release their third album, The Final Frontier. This one was also produced by Gene Simmons, but it does feel like the band is more in control here, for better or worse.
I really wanted to stretch out this time. I feel you got to stretch out. You can't do another album like the last one. I want to keep changing and growing and exploring new frontiers. And this time out I said, look, Gene, this is what I want to do. I want to do Because the Night. I want to do a ballad, Tears of Fire. I want to do a classical piece. I want to use keyboards. I want to use acoustic guitars. I want to do all this stuff. And Gene says, yeah, okay.
And really, there is some cool heavy stuff on here, and the majority of the album feels like a natural progression from the previous ones.
As the passion starts to flow, my instincts start to show. The animal inside has got nowhere to hide. Rock and roll animal.
We wanted on the Right to Rock to establish a firm foundation of hard rock and heavy metal, and then something we can build on top of as the years go by. I think The Final Frontier is more of everything, more good songs, more diversity, more good production.
But I also feel like The Final Frontier is so diverse that it contains stuff that wouldn't really appeal to the same crowd, especially in 1986. The first single, a cover of Because the Night by the Patti Smith Group, seemed to send a confusing message right off the bat.
Because the night belongs to lovers. Because the night belongs to lust. Because the night belongs to lovers. Because the night belongs to lust.
Because the first single you've released off there is the old Patti Smith hit, Because the Night, written by Patti and Bruce Springsteen. But it's hardly heavy metal, is it?
Well, no, it isn't. There's some stuff on the album that couldn't be classified heavy metal. There's some bone-crushing metal, like No Pain, No Gain, Rock and Roll Animal, but I like to do covers, and that was just one of the ones that was on my list. I worked up a demo of it, and it sounded so good that I played it for the guys in the band, and they liked it. I played it for Gene Simmons, our producer, and he liked it, so it ended up on the record. It was basically the record company's decision to release it as a single.
Oh, well, that explains it. The second single, though, Tears of Fire, is way better and feels much more like a proper metal ballad.
Tears of fire from a heart so cold. Tears of fire, feel my passion flow. Tears of fire, burn into my soul.
Complete with an excellent double solo.
And then the new one, Tears of Fire, is the one we're the most proud of. It shows the band on the road, backstage, on the bus, traveling around the United States, took a camera crew on the road with us and I think captured the real Keel the way we really are in the new video. So that one we're very proud of.
And the instrumental, Nightfall, ends up being great too. So it's kind of a shame that the album got overshadowed by a misleading first single. But if nothing else, at least Keel could rely on their trusty producer, Gene Simmons, to help them tackle their next project.
Kiss is going on tour early next year, to my understanding, and before they leave for their tour, we've got to record another Keel album before Gene gets off on the road
So he'll
again.
produce the next
Oh yeah,
Keel
you
album?
bet. Yeah, I'll sing on it and he'll produce it because we're a team. He's part of the band.
Keel's fourth album, produced by Michael Wagner, would come out in the summer of 1987. And I have to say, this is easily Keel's best album since Lay Down the Law. This album is a great mix of heavy and melodic, and feels more focused on a cohesive overall sound. Admittedly, there are some glammy elements introduced here, but it's all really solid, catchy, and upbeat. Even the more emotional tracks still have a driving force behind them.
Don't say you love me. I've heard it all before. Don't say you love me. 'Cause once I'm gone, I ain't coming back for more.
I still like those earlier Keel albums a lot, but this one is just super consistent to me and suggests that it was probably a good thing they moved on from Gene. The single, Somebody's Waiting, seems like a solid choice too.
Somebody's waiting. I said turn around. Somebody's waiting. The shadows tonight.
The video is real special to us because it went back to the first place where we ever did a concert at Perkins Palace in Pasadena, where we made our debut a few years back. Filmed the video with an audience of all Keelaholics. It felt like a concert, it looked like a concert, and it is.
And while it's too bad we didn't get a second video for a faster track too, that same year Keel covered Rock and Roll Outlaw by Rose Tattoo for the soundtrack of Dudes, an independent film directed by Penelope Spheris. Mark Ferrari and Brian Jay would leave after touring for the Keel album, to be replaced by Tony Palmucci along with Scott Warren on keyboards. This lineup would put out the hybrid studio/live album Larger Than Live in 1989. The first half is all new tracks, and they're decent overall, but I think it's also fair to say that the absence of Mark and Brian is felt.
Riding high on a never-ending quest for freedom. Riding high. Don't try to stop me now.
The second half is made up of tracks from a live show with a couple new songs and a couple old songs, and even a Steeler cover.
I'm
But the highlight is clearly Dreams Are Not Enough, which got a delightfully cheesy music video that unfortunately never aired. We get Ron in color emoting right into the camera, sexy silhouettes taking their clothes off, and Ron in black and white emoting even harder.
I want you, I need you, and dreams are not enough. I need to be with you, because dreams are not enough.
And since they're a little light on time and guitar power, Ron decides to just handle the solo himself. Ron is not messing around here. He wraps up the solo, tosses that shit to the side, and gets right back on the mic.
Dreams are not enough. Dreams are not enough. Dreams are not enough.
Well, dreams are gonna have to be enough, Ron, since apparently you're in prison. After the filming of the video, Keel would essentially dissolve. But Ron would get right back into a project though with Fair Game in 1990, a band with all female members aside from himself. This included Jana James on bass, Eva Marie and Tina Listo on guitar, and Stephanie Lee on drums. They wouldn't officially release any material while they were together, but they did get a music video for the track Blind Faith from the Full Moon movie Bad Channels. In the video, we see the band force the customers of a small diner to watch them perform.
So searching for the truth, standing on a ship of fools. Tempest tossed on a sea of lies. Who's making up these rules?
Ron commands the room and roughs up the clientele a little bit before hitting a pretty decent chorus.
Oh no, the whole world's turning to greed and lust. Oh yeah, it's them or us. Believe what you want, but don't put your trust in blind faith.
Even the cook comes out to see what's going on and finds Ron aggressively serenading his customers, who probably just want to order some pancakes for crying out loud.
They only want to hide the truth and dig you deeper in the hole.
Then again, judging by their reaction to the solo, maybe this town doesn't get much excitement. After Fair Game, Ron would go the solo route and try his hand at some country material. In 1995, he'd put out a solo album under the name Ronnie Lee Keel called Western Country. Considering where the metal scene was at that point, Ron had little choice but to rebrand, and for a mid-90s country album, I found this to be pretty fun overall.
My horse is a Harley, my gun's a guitar, just a space-age cowboy with a stone-age heart. And all I need is a redneck girl and a honky-tonk bar. My horse is a Harley, my gun's a guitar.
And it's not metal, obviously, but the solos are still badass. In 1997, Ron would be asked to provide vocals for Saber Tiger, a Japanese metal band looking for an American singer for their next album, Project One.
Climbing a mountain to the sky, don't even know the reason why. I
It's more a showcase for guitarist Akihito Kinoshita, but it's still worth checking out for some heavy riffs and some sweet solos. In 1998, Keel would return, sorta. Back in Action is actually an album of unreleased tracks from previous recordings, and it definitely has the feel of a lost Keel album.
Some rules are made to be broken. Old habits are hard to break. So we're back in town for one more round. Or whatever it takes.
If that's what you're looking for, Back in Action delivers, and the biggest issue with it is that the recordings are a bit rough and sound like demos.
All the time, wherever we are, it's Friday every night. Friday every night. And our show, everyone's a star. Friday every night. Friday every night.
In 2000, Ron would put together a band called Iron Horse, which was essentially a country metal fusion band that put out 2 albums. And for me, the first one kinda nailed it.
Set 'em up. Here's to you and what we had. I'm sorry that things went bad. And if these honky-tonk angels can't get you off my mind, then I'm dancing with the devil tonight.
For the most part, the songs are pretty straightforward country with some southern rock. But then this happens.
'Cause I'm dancing with the devil all night long.
Along with Gaetano Nicolosi on drums and Gino Arce on bass, the first Iron Horse album features Robert Marcello on guitar, laying down these sweeping metal solos. Yes, there are heavy southern rock bands, and yes, there are fast country guitarists, but I've never heard this specific combination before.
I've been looking for the right vehicle to combine all of my elements and influences, my redneck self, my screaming metal self, and all these selves that I have within me into this one thing, and it's called Iron Horse. Now they have all these subgenres and different categories of music, and to me it just doesn't make sense, man. Good music is good music, and good rock and roll is good rock and roll, and Iron Horse is good rock and roll music.
But it's a fine balance, and I think what makes this album work for me is that both the country and metal influences are so clear and distinct. They work together, but don't dilute each other.
When that morning sun comes up, I'll still be dreaming about your love. And what I did to have you here with me in my wildest dreams.
You get a chorus like that with a country mentality, and then in the same song, a solo like this. Robert would leave after the first album, and Jay Rusnick would come on for the second, Bring It On.
Well, the call came in at 1 a.m. Sheriff Joe Lynn. There's trouble at your sister's house, and I'm sure it's him again. He found her on the bedroom floor, bleeding with a busted chin.
Jay is still laying down some really cool solos, but they're a bit more conventional and not as technical as Rob's, so I didn't get quite the same drastic dynamic as I did from the first album. Depending on how you look at it, Keel would release either their 5th, 6th, or 7th album in 2010. Either way, it's their most recent.
You got to get back to the streets of rock and roll.
This would bring back the longest running lineup of Keel, except with Gino Arce filling in for Kenny Chazon on bass. Streets of Rock and Roll does have an 80s guitar tone with some fun moments, but overall I thought it was just okay, even though a couple of songs did stick out.
Out on the streets again. Riding the midnight wind.
Since then, Ron has continued his metal cowboy blend of rock and country with a solo album in 2014 and Fight Like a Band with the Ron Keel Band in 2019.
So raise your fist, make your stand. Die when you're done, so live while you can. If you gotta throw down, fight like a band.
This is a separate band from Keel, and along with Ron and Gino, also includes Jeff Collar on drums, Dakota Scott Schmidt on keys, and Dave D.C. Cawthorn on guitar. And overall, Fight Like a Band does a great job representing both the metal and country worlds, along with some catchy melodies.
Road ready, let's go. Road ready, let's roll. Road ready.
The Ron Keel Band would also release an album of various Southern rock band covers in 2020 and an EP of Keel covers in 2022. And currently, Ron appears to be working on a project called Keel World, a possible double album that will have new tracks from all of his past projects. I can't wait to hear more about that. Until then, here is your Keel homework. The Steeler album and of course Lay Down the Law are essential listening. The Right to Rock too, but if I could somehow take Lay Down the Law and just add the 3 new tracks from Right to Rock, that would be an undeniable 5-star album. Also, Final Frontier and Keel for sure. For extra credit, Larger Than Live, Back in Action, and Streets of Rock and Roll are all worth checking out if you want to hear more Keel. And I know it's not for everybody, but I really dug that first Iron Horse album. Plus, that Saber Tiger album is pretty awesome too. Also, if you like some Southern-styled hard rock, give Fight Like a Band a chance too. I think Ron has definitely carved out a place for himself as the metal cowboy, and like I said, it is a fine balance, so not easy to pull off. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Keel. As you can see, the man behind the band is still rocking and has a ton of stuff you may not be aware of to check out. As always, thanks for watching guys, and see you next time.